liftoff of Falcon 9.
You're looking at a live view of the Falcon 9 rocket carrying 10 Iridium Next satellites, preparing for liftoff in just about 20 minutes from now. My name is Tom Perderio, and welcome to the live webcast of today's Falcon 9 launch from SpaceX's West Coast launch pad at Vandenberg Air Force Base, California. Today's launch not only marks our return to flight following our September 1st mishap last year, but it also represents the first of 7 launches we're performing for Iridium to carry their next constellation of communication satellites into orbit. This will also be the first flight from Vandenberg Air Force Base since our launch of the Jason 3 satellite into orbit last year. And finally, the Falcon 9 first stage will be returning to our autonomous spaceport drone ship Just Read the Instructions once it safely delivers the Iridium payload into orbit. As you can see, we have lots to cover in today's webcast, and we are so excited to be back on the launch pad, so let's get started.
VC, verify Falcon 9 is in startup.
The vehicle's in startup. Stage 2 present for flight.
T-minus 30 seconds. $20 seconds.
Stage 1 present for flight.
15. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff of Falcon 9. Drop AVIRC and GNC proceed to procedure 3.170 for post-launch flight operation. GC, move to section post-launch pad operations to secure the pad on Net 8. Moving to post-launch pad operations.
PU is active. Stage 1 propulsion. Stay normal.
T+1 minute and 17 seconds into flight. You've heard the call out. Falcon 9 performance is nominal as we head downrange over the Pacific Ocean, flying south from the launch site at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. We're passing through the region of maximum dynamic pressure right now. This is where the high pressure of the atmosphere combines with the speed of the rocket to provide the greatest stresses on the Falcon 9 vehicle. We throttle the engines down as we pass through this phase, then throttle them back up as we proceed on into orbit. The major activity coming up will be main engine cutoff at T+2 minutes and 25 seconds. We'll listen for that, followed shortly after by stage separation and then ignition of the second stage engine. Let's listen in as the Falcon 9 continues to head downrange, preparing for shutdown of the first stage and stage separation and ignition of the second stage. plus 2 minutes and 48 seconds into flight, we've had successful shutdown separation of the Falcon 9 first stage. The second stage engine is lit. You can see it there. We're coming up on 3 minutes as we head into low Earth orbit. Everything looking good.
So as you just heard from John Innsbrucker, it sounds like the Falcon 9 first stage has successfully separated from the second stage, and the second stage engine has successfully ignited. It means we're on our way to orbit.
So following that awesome success, there's still a lot more to go. One of the cool things that's about to happen is we are going to begin the recovery operations, or rather the first stage flyback operations.
That's going to consist of that flip maneuver where the rocket is moving in one direction and it will actually flip itself over. Then it will light the engines on the back end, and that will begin a boost back burn to bring the first stage back towards the drone ship. Next up, I think we have a re-entry burn, and that'll slow down the rocket from about 2 kilometers per second down to 1 kilometer per second. It's still really fast, but any sort of decrease of energy that you can get in moving that direction is going to be better for decreasing the aerodynamic stresses on the vehicle.
And the last and final burn, coming up just a little bit later, is going to be the landing burn. That's when the first stage, right as it gets close to the deck of Just Read the Instructions, slows itself down, opens up its landing legs, and prepares for a soft touchdown on the deck of the autonomous spaceport drone ship.
And just to remind you guys, this is an experimental secondary part of this mission today, but obviously something we all get really, really excited about here. But the primary mission is launching these satellites, right?
Mm-hmm. I believe we've already separated the fairing, and that's to get rid of the excess weight, the excess mass rather, so that for the same force you can accelerate faster. It's, again, moving at 8 kilometers per second is the final goal to be circling the Earth, which is, again, 10 times the speed of a rifle bullet. As much help as you can get to minimize the amount of mass that you need to accelerate to that speed is better.
Yeah, the fairing is kind of like it's just a big windshield for the satellite. Satellites really aren't built to withstand intense aerodynamic forces because they're meant to operate inside the vacuum of space. So what we do is we lose that fairing as soon as we get out of the atmosphere, and that's where we are right now.
Yes, and so look at that. You can see that the first stage grid fins are deployed. Now those grid fins are powered by nitrogen thrusters, and they're used to actually steer and guide the rocket back down to Earth.
They're useful both at high speeds when you're moving at very supersonic, and again when you're starting to move slower, but not when you're going through the transition of the speed of sound. They become less helpful.
All right, we're going to go to John I.
We're at T plus 5.5 minutes into the flight. Second stage continuing to head downrange as we go into what will be the first of 2 orbits, the low Earth orbit, followed by a coast phase, then a reignition of the second stage engine later on this morning to get the 10 Iridium satellites into their final orbit. Now currently you can see the nozzle. Well, you can't see the nozzle of the second stage because we're showing you the first stage right now. Grid fins are deployed. We're coming up on the next first stage event, which will be in about 17 seconds, which is beginning of the entry burn, which will then be followed shortly after that by the landing burn. On the right, you can see the second stage engine nozzle. That's currently glowing red. That's typical for the upper stage engine. Everything's looking good right now. Give me a second. Let me see how things are going on the first stage. And we're coming up on the engines. We have boost back burn. You can hear the applause in the background from the SpaceX team gathered around the Mission Control Center as we're watching the 3 Merlin engines on the first stage light, and we have got shutdown for the boost back burn. So currently we're coming up on T plus 7 minutes. Second stage continues to head into orbit. First stage is coming back to the drone ship. Let's go bound to the floor for the landing burn and the entry into orbit of the second stage.
So as you just saw, the re-entry burn for the first stage has just completed and looks successful. You can still see camera footage from the first stage descending down. Hopefully we'll be able to maintain video all the way down to the drone ship.
What a great shot that is. It's beautiful. Now, so as you know, sometimes we lose that video in the drone ship. There's a lot of vibrations happening there. We're going to try our best to keep that link, and hopefully once that landing burn hits, we'll catch it, we'll see it visually. And if all goes well, Falcon 9 will be standing proud there on the deck of our drone ship.
You may have noticed little puffs of what looked like smoke coming out from between the grid fins every once in a while. Those are part of the attitude control system. I think this is the
landing burn. Looks like
burn.
the landing burn has just started, so we should be coming right down on the deck of Just Read the Instructions.
This is a single engine landing burn, so it's a slower decrease in speed.
You can actually see the deck of the drone
there's the
ship
deck.
right now.
Wow.
So we're all very happy. Now we have 2 drone ships that have both successfully received first aid.
Wow, and we can see it the entire way there. No video cut out, so props to our team for making that work. This is fantastic.
Yeah, that's standing right in the center of the X there.
What an amazing view.
Wow.
Now, amidst all the excitement, it's important to remember this is not the primary part of the mission, the Iridium mission. Let's go up to John I to hear what the status of that is.
Rock, LC on countdown 1. Please verify range is green.
Rock, range is green.
Stromback lower is ended. Stromback's locked out, 77.5 degrees. Stage 2 locks low, closed out. Vehicles and self-align. Gas closeouts have started. T-tab setup complete.
FTS, announce AFTS is ready for launch.
AFTS is ready for launch.
Ground side gas
BC
closeouts
verify
complete.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup. Stage 2 pressing for flight.
LD verify go for launch.
LD, go for launch.
T-minus 30.
Stage 1's pressing for flight.
15. 10. 9. 8. 7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. Lift off the Falcon 9. Prop AVI, RC, and GMC proceeded to 3.170 for post-launch flight operations. GC, move to post-launch pad operations to secure the pad on PadNet A.
Copy, Wilco.
Stage 1 PU's active.
F9 power and telemetry nominal.
T plus 53 seconds into flight. We've just heard the call-outs that engines are nominal. We've also got good status on the avionics system. We're coming up on maximum dynamic pressure. T plus 1 minute, 30 seconds into flight. Merlin engines continue to perform nominally. We've heard a call out of MVAC-D engine chill has begun. That indicates that propellants now are being fed to the front of the turbo pump on the upper stage engine to chill it as we get ready to light the upper stage engine in just about 45 seconds. We're coming up on several major activities all at once. At about T plus 2 minutes and 24 seconds, we should have cutoff of the 9 first stage engines, stage separation, ignition of the upper stage engine, and right afterwards, reignition of 3 first stage engines for boost back burn. Let's listen and watch together.
Stage separation confirmed.
Baja AOS.
Coming up on T plus 3 minutes, stage separation, reignition successful. The first stage boost back burn is underway. We're coming up on fairing separation now around the 10 Iridium satellites.
Fairing separation confirmed.
3 minutes and 23 seconds into flight. You can hear the applause at SpaceX. Smaller crowd, many of our folks drove up actually to watch the launch from Vandenberg, just about 180 miles up the road from us. First stage grid fins are deploying. You can see the new dark gray titanium grid fins. They deploy a little more slowly than the old lighter weight aluminum fins. Second stage engine burn continues to look nominal. Chamber pressure is good. Trajectory looks good for the second stage.
Stage 2 propulsion still nominal.
4 minutes into flight, you can see the grid fins are fully deployed. We're listening for when the drone ship has what they call AOS, acquisition of signal. That'll indicate the telemetry from the first stage is being received by the drone ship. The drone ship does not send commands to the first stage in flight. 4.5 minutes into flight, the upper stage engine continues to perform nominally.
Stage 1 and Stage 2 power and telemetry remain nominal.
T plus 5 minutes into flight. Second stage continues to perform well, carrying 10 Iridium satellites to a parking orbit. The next major event is entry burn. We will light 3 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. That'll slow us down for entry through the atmosphere. That's a fairly long burn, should be coming up in about 30 seconds. Six minutes into flight, you can see the entry burn is underway on the Falcon9 first stage, bringing it back to the drone ship, titled Just Read the Instructions, awaiting it in the Pacific Ocean.
Stage 1 AMTSS.
Entry burn is complete. The next burn will be the landing burn. So right now we're coming up on 7 minutes. It's actually 6 minutes and 40 seconds into flight. Stage 1 is headed back to the drone ship in the Pacific Ocean. Second stage continues to head south towards Antarctica as we head for a parking orbit, which is expected shortly after T plus 9 minutes. AOS on the drone ship means acquisition of signal. The drone ship now receiving telemetry from the Falcon 9 first stage. As a reminder, weather conditions are borderline out at the drone ship. We'll hopefully see a landing coming up here shortly. Landing burn is underway.
Stage 2 power and telemetry remain nominal.
And you can tell by the cheering in the background, first stage, Falcon 9 Flight 38 has landed on just read the instructions. Our drone ship in the Pacific Ocean landing at about T plus 7 minutes and 47 seconds, right on time. Meanwhile, the second stage engine at 8 minutes and 13 seconds into flight continues to perform well. We've got less than 1 minute before we go into our low Earth parking orbit.
Stage 2 lock secured.
Rock range is green.
Vehicles in self-align. Stage 1, Stage 2 paragraphing secured.
AFTS is ready for launch.
Falcon 9's in startup. Stage 2, the startup pressures.
LD go for launch.
30.
Stage 1 is at liftoff pressures.
15.
Falcon 9's configured for flight.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. GC moving to post-launch operations to secure the pad on the pad editing.
GC copies, Wilco.
T plus 1 minute and 17 seconds into flight, Falcon 9 approaching max Q. You've heard the call out, MVAC-D chilling. We're now getting the second stage engine ready for ignition. Several activities coming up here very shortly. At T plus 2 minutes and 24 seconds, we expect main engine cutoff, followed immediately by stage separation and ignition of the upper stage engine. Right after that, the first stage will begin the first of 3 burns to return us back to the Pacific Ocean to the drone ship parked offshore about 300 kilometers downrange. Coming up on MECO.
We have MECO. We have back ignition.
T plus 2 minutes and 47 seconds into flight. We've had successful stage separation and ignition of the upper stage engine. And as you can see, we've also relit 3 of the engines on the first stage to begin the sequence that will return it to the drone ship in the Pacific Ocean. Boost back burn lasts about 30 seconds. And we have fairing separation. Had a brief view of the Iridium satellites as the fairing separated. Again, it's just before dawn as we head south over the Pacific Ocean, so we're not getting any sunlight. First stage boost back burn did complete. Fairing did successfully separate. We're waiting to hear the drone ship AOS, that's acquisition of signal. That indicates the drone ship is receiving telemetry from the first stage. Second stage propulsion continues to look nominal, coming up at T plus 4 minutes into flight. T plus 5 minutes into the flight of Falcon 9 carrying 10 Iridium Next satellites. Next event in our timeline is in about 35 seconds. That'll be a second ignition of the Falcon 9 first stage, what we call the entry burn. This is a burn of 3 Merlin 1D engines that'll slow us down for the actual re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. The burn itself will last about 13 seconds. Meanwhile, second stage, performance continues to look good, the trajectory is good, engine parameters look good.
Stage 1 entry startup.
And you see the flare on the screen. We have startup. It looks like all 3 engines are up and running. Also, you can see silhouetted the grid fins did deploy earlier. They'll now be used to guide us as we enter the Earth's atmosphere. And we've had shutdown of the entry burn.
Stage 1 AFTS has nuked.
The automated flight termination system, autonomous flight termination system has safed on the first stage. We're coming up on T plus 7 minutes. Stage 1 is headed back to the drone ship in the Pacific Ocean. Stage 2 still headed to its initial parking orbit. Shutdown of the second stage engine should be just over T plus 9 minutes into flight.
AOS.
Now we're getting ready for the landing burn of the first stage.
Landing burn start. Successful.
Delta LS. 7.5 minutes into flight. You can hear from the applause. We lost the signal briefly, then it returned with the view of the first stage in that pre-dawn darkness, sitting on top of Just Read the Instructions. Out in the Pacific Ocean, a successful landing of the first stage. Meanwhile, the primary mission continuing, the second stage, 7 minutes and 54 seconds into flight, a little more than a minute left to go. Propulsion continues to look good on the second stage engine as we power to the low Earth parking orbit carrying the 10 Iridium Next satellites.
Stage 2 tanks pressing for flight.
LD is go for launch. T-minus 30 seconds. 20.
Stage 1 tanks pressing for flight.
15. 10. 9. 8. 7. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. Liftoff, Falcon 9.
Vehicles cleared the tower.
Propulsion nominal.
Moving to 3.170.
Power and telemetry are nominal.
T plus a minute 10 into flight. We've just gone through throttle down and throttle back up of the Falcon 9 first stage engines. We've gone through max Q on the first stage. First stage continues to look good on the engines, headed downrange away from Vandenberg Air Force Base. We're chilling in the MVAC engine 2 minutes into flight, getting it ready for ignition. Next major event coming up in 30 seconds is shutdown of the 9 first stage engines, followed by stage separation and ignition of the second stage engine. Shortly after that, we hope to get a view of payload fairing separation from the second stage.
Miko.
Stage separation confirmed.
Boost back from startup.
We've had successful separation and ignition of the upper stage engine. First words from propulsion, things look good on the upper stage engine and the second stage.
Boost
Next up, we should see fairing separation.
Fairing separation confirmed.
You hear the applause from the team gathered around Mission Control Center here in Hawthorne. It's 5:30 in the evening. Second shift is in. They're watching the flight. Fairing separation looked very good, exposing the 10 Iridium Next satellites to the vacuum of outer space. We're 3.5 minutes plus into flight. Second stage performance continues to look excellent.
AFTS is ready for launch.
Falcon9 and startup.
Ground side gas closeout's complete.
Stage 1 tanks pressing for flight.
This is the LD on countdown 1. We are go for launch.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Propellant tanks press for flight.
15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Power and telemetry are nominal.
And we had successful liftoff of the Falcon 9. As you saw, it's pitching downrange at the moment to continue its ascent into orbit. Going supersonic right about now. And it'll be going through max Q shortly.
Vehicle is supersonic.
So we're decreasing the engine thrust to minimize the pressures of max Q, which is the point at which the rocket is pushing hardest against the atmosphere.
Vehicle is experiencing maximum dynamic pressure.
And now that we're through that milestone, we'll be increasing the thrust of the engines in order to get to orbit. But while the atmosphere is still relatively thick, we can prevent it from exerting too much pressure on the fairing by throttling the engines a little bit. We're also chilling the Merlin vacuum engine.
And vac engine chill has begun.
And that call out means that we're bringing the engines down to the correct temperatures in order to prevent the liquid oxygen from turning into a gas in the second stage as well. Coming up shortly, we have a few events in quick succession. The first stage main engines will cut off, the two stages will separate, and the second stage will begin its first burn.
And vac ignition.
And there you saw it. The first stage main engines cut off, the two stages separated, and the second stage began its burn. You can actually see the first stage falling away behind the second stage for some of these shots. That's gorgeous. The first stage will be performing a one-engine boost back burn and continuing downrange for a simulated landing. And you just saw the
Second stage trajectory nominal.
just saw the two halves of the fairing fall away.
Good from deploy.
We will be attempting a recovery of one of the halves of the fairing today on our fairing recovery ship, Mr. Stephen, as part of an experimental program to reuse those parts of the vehicle.
Flight tanks configured for flight.
15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Vehicle switching downrange.
Stage 1 props nominal.
GC copies, we'll go.
Plus 47 seconds into flight. Falcon 9 performing nominally. We're currently throttling down the 9 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage, preparing for the period of maximum dynamic pressure and going supersonic.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
You heard the call out, Falcon 9 is supersonic. We're throttling the Merlin 1D engines back up as we pass through the period of maximum
Vehicles
dynamic
experience
pressure.
Maximum dynamic pressure.
A minute and a half into flight, trajectory looks good for Falcon 9. We're seeing the view from a ground camera, and obviously we're having trouble with the autofocus, but Falcon 9 continues to track downrange well. Power on the Merlin 1D engines looks good. Avionics power looks good.
MVAC engine chill has begun.
The MVAC engine chill call out indicates that we have opened the pre-valve. We're beginning to chill in the upper stage engine in preparation for ignition. Now the sequence of events coming up at T plus 245, we will have main engine cutoff. We'll shut down the 9 Merlin engines. The first stage will then separate, and we will light the second stage engine. So those activities coming up in just under 20 seconds from now. We're throttling down the engines in preparation for MECO.
Eco. MVAC ignition. Stage 1 AFTS.
We've had successful shutdown and separation. Second stage engine has lit. Major activity coming up in about 14 seconds is separation of the payload fairing. We have fairing separation confirmed. You can see 3 of the Iridium next satellites of the set of 5. As I mentioned, the gray satellites mounted on top of that, but not visible from the camera.
Is following a nominal trajectory.
3.5 minutes into flight, we've heard the call out. The trajectory is nominal. The power on the upper stage engine is good.
Stage 1 present for flight.
T-minus 15 seconds.
Falcon 9 is configured for flight.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. liftoff of the Falcon 9.
Vehicle is pitching downrange. Stage 1 propulsion nominal.
Avionics power and telemetry nominal.
T plus 48 seconds after liftoff, Falcon 9 leaving Earth under 1.7 million pounds of thrust. We're throttling the 9 Merlin engines right now as we get ready for the period of a maximum dynamic pressure as the vehicle goes supersonic.
Vehicle is supersonic.
We've heard a call out, vehicle is supersonic. The Merlin engines have throttled back up. We're through the period of maximum dynamic pressure. We've heard call out, propulsion is nominal. Avionics is reporting nominal status also.
Vehicle has passed through maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Next activity we should hear call out is the start of MVAC chill. That's again preparing the turbo pump on the second stage. And we've heard the call that the chill looks good.
Hawthorne acquisition of signal.
Hawthorne acquisition of signal, that means our antenna here at Hawthorne has also acquired the first stage and the second stage. Now next major activity coming up in just about half a minute, shutdown of the 9 Merlin engines followed by stage separation, ignition of the second stage engine, and then immediately after that we will flip the first stage and do a boost back burn as part of the landing sequence. Getting a good view from onboard camera. The ground cameras aren't able to follow the rocket due to the fog today.
Eco. Stage 1 is in air to split. Impact ignition. Stage 1's in boost back burn.
We've heard the call out. Stage 1 is in the boost back burn. The second stage successfully separated and lit. Getting some great views from space. If the sunlight was right, we'd be getting some great plume illumination, but it's a little early in the morning still here on the West Coast. Boost back burn continuing.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Stage 1 boost back shutdown.
We've heard the call out boost back shutdown, and on the right hand side we've got fairing separation. The 10 Iridium next satellites now exposed to the vacuum of space. Now the boost back burn that we just saw on the left screen, the first stage did a burn that had some velocity that canceled part of its downrange speed. It won't return all the way to Vandenberg, but it is headed to the drone ship that's about 235 kilometers downrange.
Stage 2 is following a nominal trajectory.
That call out stage 2 following a nominal trajectory, what we like to hear, second stage going right down between the predefined limits on the map that I'm looking at, showing that we're on target, we're on course. Pressurization temps, that's the hot helium we inject in the second stage, look good as we continue on into the burn of the second stage. Now currently we're about 4 minutes and 20 seconds into flight. The first stage has reached apogee. While it was lighting its engines a minute ago, it continued to climb. It's now reached the highest point called apogee. It's now beginning to descend to the drone ship in the Pacific Ocean. Some nice views from space, especially compared to what the fog did to our cameras at ground level. Second stage continues to be nominal. The upper stage engine is at full power. Everything's looking good. Now coming up next in less than half a minute is the entry burn. That'll be like the boost back burn we had a couple minutes ago. We're going to use the same 3 restartable first stage engines. We light the center engine, and then a second later we light the 2 outboard engines. And that'll slow us down to prepare us to go subsonic and get ready for the burn that will land us, hopefully, on the drone ship.
Stage 1's in entry burn.
Heard the call out, stage 1's in entry burn. You can see 2 of the titanium grid fins back illuminated by the burn from the 3 Merlin 1D engines.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
Shutdown of the entry burn. We're at 6 minutes and 15 seconds. In about 30 seconds, we're going to have the landing burn. Now, as a reminder,
Stage 1
the
FTS
weather
has
and the
saved.
sea conditions are fairly rough. They're the worst that we've ever had for trying to get a first stage back on the drone ship. So it's going to be a little bit iffy here this morning. Meanwhile, second stage continues to be on trajectory, performance looking good. Now when we light the engine, we'll be down to about 650 miles an hour, and then in 30 seconds,
Stage 1's transonic.
we will be landing.
Stage 1 landing burn startup.
Waiting for the downlink from the drone ship or from the Falcon 9.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. And landing burn shutdown.
We've heard a call out, landing legs deployed, then we heard landing shutdown. We don't have a very good picture, but we think we have a first stage on the drone ship. Meanwhile, second stage continues to burn, coming up on 8 minutes into flight. We'll get second stage engine shutdown in about half a minute, following which we'll enter a 43-minute coast.
Terminal guidance.
We've heard the call out, stage 2's in terminal guidance. That means we are now doing the math. You know, for those who've done the high guidance math, they know how we're guiding ourselves into the final orbit, and then we'll shut down the engine.
Seco.
We've heard the call out of SECO, and looking at
GNC confirms good orbit insertion.
the guidance plots we have in front of it, and we just a good one. Second stage is right where we want it to be, and it also appears, although we were hoping to get a view back from the drone ship, that the first stage is on the drone ship, but there weren't any lights, so all we saw was the flicker of the engines as we shut down.
Four, three, two, one. Liftoff of the Falcon 9.
Spacecraft 1, separation confirmed. Spacecraft 4, separation confirmed.
5th Iridium satellite.
Spacecraft 7, 10, final spacecraft deployed.
Thank you, everyone. Awesome mission.
You are looking at a live view of the Falcon 9 rocket on the pad at our Vandenberg Air Force Base launch site as we prepare for liftoff a little over 15 minutes from now. Good morning from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. I'm John Isbrucker, the Falcon Principal Integration Engineer, and I'd like to welcome you to the webcast of the Iridium 8 mission. And a particularly special welcome to CEO Matt Desch and the nearly 250 Iridium guests who made the trip out west to watch today's launch. This is the final in a series of 8 launches for our customer Iridium to build their new satellite network, Iridium Next. Our first launch for Iridium was the Iridium 1 mission, which took place on January 14, 2017, almost 2 years from today. Now on this final mission, we're flying 10 Iridium Next satellites to join the 65 satellites previously placed in orbit by SpaceX. Today's launch is scheduled for 7:31 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, or 15 hours 31 minutes Universal Time. Now, as you can see on the timeline bar at the bottom of the display, this is a long mission. Today's webcast will last over an hour. Now, following stage separation, we'll be attempting recovery of the first stage on our West Coast drone ship. Just read the instructions. Now, for the music fans out there, Iridium has curated another special Spotify playlist to go along with today's launch. To play along at home, search for the Iridium 8 Launch Soundtrack playlist and get ready to start the playlist at exactly T-minus 12 minutes and 55 seconds before liftoff, just about 30 seconds from now.
Falcon9 is in startup.
This is Launch Director. Falcon9, go for launch.
T-minus 15 seconds.
Vehicles configured for flight.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Liftoff of Falcon 9.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
Stage 1 props nominal.
T plus 40 seconds and Falcon 9 is on its way with a countdown of the last 10 seconds by Iridium CEO Matt Desch. We're throttling down now in preparation for the period of maximum dynamic pressure.
Vehicle supersonic.
RC on countdown 1, first motion time 15:31:33.492 UTC.
Calling out the time there of liftoff over the net.
Acquisition of signal.
We're through the period of maximum dynamic pressure.
Maximum aerodynamic pressure.
Merlin engines continuing to perform at 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Falcon 9 heading out into the upper atmosphere. Nice view from the first stage camera looking aft. We're headed south from Vandenberg Air Force Base, Space Launch Complex 4 East.
MVAC engine chill.
The MVAC engine cheer call out indicates that we have now opened up the oxygen that goes to the pump on the second stage engine, chilling it down for ignition coming up about a minute from now. We're hearing good call outs Propulsion looks nominal, the trajectory looks good. Now coming up will be rapid fire events. Main engine cutoff, we shut down the 9 Merlin 1D engines. At 2.5 minutes, we will separate the stages. We'll light the second stage engine, and at just a little bit after that, we'll relight 3 engines on the first stage to begin slowing it down for a landing in the Pacific Ocean on our drone ship.
Stage separation confirmed.
And back ignition.
Stage 1 has entered its flip.
So we've had successful shutdown of the first stage. It's separated. It's doing the flip to reorient, and it's lit its 3 engines to begin slowing it down to come to the drone ship. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side of the display, second stage engine has ignited, begin propelling the Iridium satellites. You can see them there as we get ready for fairing separation.
Fairing separation confirmed. Stage 1 boost block shutdown.
A lot of events happening. You saw the fairing separate, and you can see one half of the fairing drifting away behind the second stage on the right-hand side of the display. On the left side, we've had shutdown from the boost back burn, and you can see the titanium grid fins slowly extending. That's nominal for those grid fins. The white flashing you see, that is attitude control gas, nitrogen, that's used to orient the first stage. We're coming up 4 minutes into flight. In about 1.5 minutes, the first stage will initiate a quick re-entry burn to again slow the rocket down as it re-enters Earth's atmosphere. 1 minute later, we'll perform the final burn, the landing burn, which will decelerate the vehicle to a gentle landing atop our drone ship. Just read the instructions. Now, as a reminder, recovery is always a secondary objective to our primary goal of delivering our customers' satellites to orbit. Views you have right now, the camera on the left is looking up the inner stage where there used to be a second stage. Now we're looking at the grid fins with the Pacific Ocean in the background. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side, the MVAC-D second stage engine running about 200,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space. You can see the nozzle glowing red hot. That's nominal for that nozzle. We're about half a minute away from the entry burn. This one will also be a 3-engine burn. That'll slow the vehicle down as we go to subsonic speeds, and then eventually a final burn a little bit after that to land on the drone ship. Getting excellent views as the sun has risen recently over the west coast here in the United States.
Stage 1 entry burn is started.
Call out the entry burn on stage 1 is started. 3 engines up and running.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down.
And the entry burn shut down, called out over the countdown net, as you heard.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Everything continuing to look good. First stage entry burn has ended. We're less than a minute until the third and final landing burn, followed by touchdown on the drone ship. And you can see the first stage descending back down through the atmosphere as it's coming up on the cloud deck. Now, as a reminder, we may lose live video
Stage
coverage on the drone ship as the engine exhaust degrades the radio frequency signal. Now, if that happens, we'll share status updates on the first stage as they become available.
Drone ship AOS.
Drone ship AOS means the drone ship has acquired
Stage
the
1
signal.
landing burn is started.
Center engine has lit. We're slowing ourselves down, preparing to find the drone ship right underneath us. You've got the camera view from the drone ship now. Waiting to see the first stage come into view. And we're getting the signal dropout, which is not unusual. We're going to keep pressing on. We have not heard confirmation.
Falcon 9 has landed. Landing operators moving to 11.1 high.
There you go. We heard the call out from recovery. Falcon 9 has landed. We hope to get a shot of it on the deck of the drone ship a little bit later, but we can confirm we're down with the first stage. We're pressing on the second stage mission. Currently, trajectory looks good. We've begun throttling down the Merlin vacuum engine, maintaining the G load on the Iridium Next satellites. And we've got the view back from the drone ship. There it is, right in the middle of the bullseye. The first stage is back again down on Earth. Meanwhile, second stage is getting ready in less than 20 seconds for shutdown and entry into the parking orbit.
Stage 2 FTS is safe.
Coming up on shutdown of the second stage engine, and we've had shutdown.
MVAC shutdown.
Now we're going to wait for the guidance officer to give us a report on the orbit.
What's the signal, Hawthorne, as expected?
Looking up right now.
Nominal orbit insertion.
It sounds like we have a good orbit insertion. Looking at apogee, perigee, inclination, everything's looking good. So we're 9.5 minutes into flight. We've got a satisfactory parking orbit. We're now going to go into a coast phase. This is about a 43-minute period while we coast over to Africa, where we will then relight the upper stage engine and then eventually deploy the 10 Iridium Next satellites. So we're going to halt live commentary right now. Going to take a break. We'll be back, though, at T plus 50 minutes to continuing coverage of the Falcon 9 mission for Iridium 8. Welcome back. We're setting up for the deployment of the first of the 10 Iridium Next satellites in just under 1 minute from now. Now, the camera right now is switched back. We're looking at the MVAC-D nozzle on the second stage. We're currently passing over the island of Madagascar. We're flying north. We'll pass over the Horn of Africa and then up over Central Europe. We are moving into the Terminator, so the views will be a little difficult. We're out of the light of the sun to the most part, and we are also illuminating with a small lens or a small flashlight that's mounted on the second stage. Now we're coming up on separation of the first satellite. You might just see it at the very top of the screen moving through the frame. The Iridium satellites are stacked in 2 levels. Let's wait for the call out.
Spacecraft separation confirmed.
And you can see a little bit of activity. The first of the 10 Iridium Next satellites has deployed. As I was starting to say, the Iridium satellites are stacked in 2 levels. So there are 5 satellites on the top tier and then 5 satellites on the bottom tier. So the first 5 that we release are off of the top. They're farther away from the payload attached fitting camera, and not all of them are in the field of view. So some of them we'll get to see, some of them will be out of sight from the camera and we'll only hear the call out. But the good news, satellite number 1 is separated on its way. We've got 9 to go, and we're about a minute away from the second satellite. We'll be back then with the separation.
Also signal South Africa as expected.
Okay, we're getting ready in about 6 seconds for deployment of the second satellite.
Payload separation confirmed.
And I was a little behind on my call there. We have confirmation of payload separation. Fortunately, it looks like it was a little bit outside of the field of view of the camera, so we only heard the call out from the avionics engineer. 2 down and 8 more to go. As I mentioned, these are released every 100 seconds. Commands from the second stage flight computer go to the release system. It deploys the Iridium satellites off of the SpaceX built dispenser that's mounted on top of the second stage. For the next deployment.
Satellite deploy confirmed.
The third of the 10 Iridium Next satellites successfully deployed. That one's out of field of view of the camera. You can't see it, but we did hear the call out. We see it on telemetry. Now currently, SpaceX's second stage passing over a series of ground stations. We've been using South Africa, we're using Malindi, we're coming up on Dubai, we just lost contact as expected with Mauritius, so we're handing off. So we may or may not have live video as we come up to this next separation, as we're in the middle of the handoff between the African ground stations and the Dubai ground station.
Acquisition of signal, Dubai.
And we've got signal through the Dubai ground station. Satellite number 4, this should be a good one if my numbers are correct. We ought to be able to see that one come off in the field of view of the camera.
Payload has separated.
And there we've got a nice visual confirmation. Separation of the 4th of the 10 Iridium Next satellites. Like clockwork, on to the 5th one in 100 seconds. For those wondering, the view of the MVAC-D engine on the night side of the Earth, off of one of the drain lines, you could see that white formation. That's solid oxygen. That's what oxygen looks like when it's frozen. It's actually fairly fluffy. It's not icy or hard, and you'll see that come off of second stage drain lines every now and then during our webcast. About 10 seconds until deployment of the 5th satellite. This one won't be in the field of view. We'll only get call out from telemetry indication.
Payload deploy confirmed.
And what we love to hear, payload deploy confirmed. That's the 5th of the 5 satellites on the upper tier. We now concentrate on the 5 satellites that are surrounding the dispenser on the lower half of the stack of what was originally 10 Iridium satellites. Now we're down to 5 to go. Coming up on deployment of the 6th Iridium Next satellite, we might be able to see this one out of the corner.
Satellite separation confirmed.
And we actually had a pretty good view there of the 6th Iridium satellite deploying off of the dispenser, mounted on top of the Falcon 9 second stage. Everything continued to go well on the timeline. 6 down, 4 to go, 100 seconds until the next satellite deployment.
Also signal Melindy as expected.
We're inside 10 seconds now to the next deployment. Again, this one is probably going to be out of the field of view. Camera is a little too zoomed in to see it, but it'd just be below the satellite that you're looking at.
Spacecraft has separated.
Confirmation of separation, we can see it in the brake wire telemetry. So we've got 7 down, 3 to go, so with just 5 minutes to go in the deployment sequence. Okay, we're about 10 seconds away from separation from the 8th of the 10 Iridium Next satellites. This one's out of view of the camera. It's on the backside of the dispenser.
Spacecraft deploy confirmed.
But even though we can't see it, we can hear it. As the avionics engineer confirms that the satellite has been successfully deployed. 8 down, we've got just 2 to go. Just over 30 seconds away from deployment of the 9th satellite. A word about this one. This one should be the one that I like to see. It's the one right in front of the payload attach fitting camera. If you'll notice, it says SV10 underneath it in white letters. This is the 9th one to separate. The numbering that is stenciled onto the vehicle is different than the order that we separate in. So don't worry when number 9 separates and you're going, why is it labeled number 10?
Satellite has separated.
Oh yeah, nice view. Satellite number 9 has separated. We're down to 1 to go. We're coming up about 10 seconds to go for deployment of the 10th satellite on this, the Iridium 8 mission.
Final Iridium satellite separation confirmed.
And you've heard the call out. Final Iridium satellite separation. And that's not only 10 for 10 today, but that's 75 for 75. It's been a clean sweep for Iridium and Falcon 9. That's going to bring an end to our webcast, and it's been a great webcast. Falcon 9, we had sunrise, we saw the rocket countdown, launched right on time, beautiful views from the onboard cameras. First stage, we landed on the drone chip right on the X. Second stage went into the first orbit, it was a very nominal orbit. We relit the engine. Second orbit was an excellent one, and just now you've watched with us over the last 15 minutes or so as we've deployed all 10 of the Iridium Next satellites, completing 75 satellites on orbit for the new generation of Iridium capability from space. Now, we'd like to thank the United States Air Force for their range support today, and our licensing agency, the Federal Aviation Administration. And a special thanks to our Iridium customer for 8 great launches over the past 2 years. When Iridium and SpaceX entered this agreement, it was, at the time, the largest single commercial satellite deal ever signed. So it's been exciting to support these launches and a true honor to be Iridium's launch provider. Thanks, Iridium, and thanks to those watching, and have a great day. Falcon 9 team is conducting the countdown, working no significant issues. We're on schedule for an on-time launch.
Rock, RC, countdown 1.
Rock.
Verify range is green and go for launch.
Range is green.
F9 is in startup.
LD, go for launch.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff of the Falcon 9.
SpaceX has always been a can-do kind of company. That's the way Iridium is too, and it seems like the right kind of match.